going on? My son's friends are dropping like flies, and it clearly has to be connected to Montgomery. I wish I could grant my son the time to grieve his childhood friend, but there's much more physical pain that demands our attention. Casey's morning was cut short by another episode of severe arm aching. I can almost hear his bone being carved from the seat over. We quickly called a nurse and got him admitted into a room as soon as possible. They gave him something to numb the pain, but the drugs can only help so much. Something was killing him from the inside, but I couldn't tell if it was the bone carving or arguing with Mel before his sudden death. But there was no time to figure it out. I had to save my son. I asked Casey, this Montgomery house, is there any possibility or reason that he could be following you or your friends? Did you touch something, break something, or maybe take? And then Casey cut me off right there. He said he didn't steal anything. Him and his crew made a pact. Only things taken are photos. They swore by it, and they'll hold anyone who does accountable. He explained that when they left the home, everyone involved swore that nothing was being taken. I understood his frustrations. I know Casey put that lifestyle behind him. But his friends, how could I trust them? I nodded, and I let Casey get some rest. While he was sleeping, I rummaged through his bag to find his phone. I eventually found it, along with the photographs that Casey gave to Mel the other day. He must have taken them from Mel's room right after he passed. Maybe he wanted a keepsake to remember their last adventures together. I set aside the pictures and I went through his contacts on his phone. If each of his friends were being carved, what was Joanne's sin? I called Joanne's phone in hopes that maybe a relative would have kept it in their possession, and thankfully her mother answered. I explained what was happening to Casey and Mel, and I asked if there was anything that was out of the ordinary about Joanne during her final moments, or if she had any sort of item from the home that might have caused such a curse. Her mother went silent. She said she would usually be offended by the accusation that Joanne would be a thief, but during her final moments, she wasn't so sure. She said that she would send me a picture of what Joanne left behind, then hung up to hide her imminent crying. Moments later, a text came through, saying this were the only things that they had from Joanne's final moments. An x-ray and a note. I enlarged the picture of her x-ray. It was a photo of her lungs. Across both sides of the lungs was carved the word liar, 2 letters for each. I could only imagine the pain she went through. The other photo was of a letter she wrote right before she passed. It was frantically scribbled with splatters of her own coughed up blood on it, making it very hard to read. The only thing I could make out was, "Took warning, I saw." Her mother sent another message saying she didn't know what she meant, and she couldn't ask because Joanne could barely speak. She was also delirious from the lack of oxygen and loss of blood. But I think I had just enough info to put it together. Joanne must have taken something and regretted that she didn't listen to her friend's warnings. Her sin was lying about the oath. Joanne's mother was hurt by my conclusion, but agreed to search Joanne's rooms. Joanne's mother was hurt by my conclusion, but agreed to search Joanne's room some more for anything out of place. I thanked Joanne's mother and sent my condolences, then explained everything to Casey's mother. We came up with the plan that one of us needs to drive to Montgomery's house and look around to see if there was any items moved out of place, using the photos taken there as references. My wife immediately volunteered to go to the house, which confused me. She smirked and said, "You can't even find the remote 10 inches from your face. I think my eyes are needed." We chuckled, a much-needed laugh after these past couple of days. She said, "Stay with Casey and call me if anything happens." I agreed. She kissed Casey on the head, took the photos, and left. About an hour passed as she arrived at the Montgomery house. Text after text, she would send me pictures of the exact locations of each corresponding photograph to make sure everything was intact. An old empty tank of his mysterious gas, and the disgusting operating table, all still in the exact spot. But none of those concerned us. What we were really looking for was the scalpel that was apparently hidden behind an old painting of the surgeon himself. My wife located the painting and slowly pushed to the side. Behind there, on top of the small pedestal, was the scalpel. Right there. We couldn't understand it. We were sure it had to have been gone. My wife stormed outside of the house and took a picture of the entire facility with the text, "This is the house, right?" Granted, I know she was speaking out of frustration, because the odds of us stumbling upon another psychosurgeon's domicile was slim to none. The house was correct, the exact same as the one in the photographs. I sat for a while as my wife drove home. Suddenly, Casey woke up in a sweat and grabbed my arm. I quickly texted his mother to come home as soon as possible. I could hear it again, scraping. Casey's face was twisted in pain. "Do you know?" he asked. "Well, know what?" He said, "My sin, what's on my arm?" And I told him I didn't know, and he started to cry. And then he whimpered, "I think I know. I'm a bad friend. Mel told me." I asked what he was talking about. Casey explained. Our argument before he told me I was weak, that I started stealing just because I was scared that people wouldn't like me otherwise. Mel was always so much better at it. I just followed. Until one day we hopped a fence of a farm and we were going to steal something stupid like a pitchfork or something. The farmer caught us. We tried to run and Mel tripped and hurt his leg, his left leg, and he fell. He needed my help and I just kept running. I should have went back. I left him there, and then I left him at the house. I'm weak. In that moment, Casey's mother rushed in. I held Casey's aching hand gently. I told him that he was wrong, because he was brave enough to change. "You're nothing like that anymore." Casey's mother chimed in, telling him just how amazing he truly was. The pain got worse, the scraping louder. Casey squeezed my hand tight. I squeezed it back harder, and I told him, "I don't care what's written on your arm. We know who you are, Casey. And we love you," Casey's mother added. The scraping grew louder, then louder, and then it stopped. And so did Casey. But me and his mother never stopped squeezing his hand.